morning. Hello, Jan. I'm happy you are here. I'm happy you are joining me to discuss this quite important and very recent topic that is Polish Euroscepticism and populism, especially that recently we've been hearing a lot about so-called Polexit, and there is a lot of discussion about European integration and Poland, and I think that this research is much more relevant now than when we started our project. So I would like today to talk to you about Poland case study of a populist Euroscepticism, and whether it really exists in Poland, what are the main features of this populist Euroscepticism in Poland, and all of this we will base on the results, on the findings of our research that is conducted within a PopRebel project that is funded by Horizon 2020. PopRebel meaning Populist Rebellion Against Modernity in 21st Century Eastern Europe, Neo-Traditionalism and Neo-Feudalism. So Jan, if you could tell us a bit about our study, and later we'll try to show you our findings.
So within the PopRebel framework, which in general studies populism in Central and Eastern Europe, our study focuses on the phenomenon of populist Euroscepticism, and we're studying it on the basis of the case of Poland. And our aim of this research is to identify to what extent Polish political parties combine populist rhetoric, discourse and ideas with Eurosceptic ideas and positions. To do this, we look at a wide range of material. So we look at political speeches, we look at parliamentary debates, and also at party programs. And we study the time period 2015 to 2020, so the last 5 years, basically.
Thank you, but before we go into the first results that we are happy to share, I think it's important to define what do we understand by the main concepts, so by populism and by Euroscepticism. And if you allow me, I will start from populism. That is really not easy to define. It's a broad phenomena. It's quite an elusive concept used by many scholars, but also journalists. It's very much present in the public debate. But for the sake of our study, we decided to focus on the definition of populism delivered by Kas Mudde, and we see here populism as a thin ideology, which means that it goes very well with other thin ideology like Euroscepticism, but it also means that the most important category is this dichotomy, or actually maybe even antagonism, between two groups, the pure people and the elite, usually corrupted elite in this case. This definition of populism also speaks about a moralistic platform where it's very easy to distinguish between the good and the evil, and this distinction is also very important in assessing the politics, both on national and on international arena. What matters here is, of course, the will of the people, and this will of the people, of the pure people, ordinary people, it should prevail above all. But unfortunately, populists claim that for now it's overruled by elites, by institutions that are not connected to this pure people, and they are usually the criticized institutions of liberal democracy. What is also interesting here is that populism and Euroscepticism often go together. So it's not us to first see a correlation between those two. They are not the same, they are distinct, but they are in a way very similar phenomena. So they are basing on a very similar features very similar characteristics. So, Jan, if you could say a couple of words about Euroscepticism and how we will be understanding it in our research.
Yeah, sure. So in general, Euroscepticism we understand to be opposition to European integration. It can be opposition to the process of European integration or the state of European integration, such as the current status quo of the European Union. And there's different ideas about how to define Euroscepticism precisely. In our research, we specifically look at 4 aspects of European integration, which can be opposed by political actors or by the public. And this is based on a typology by Sofia Vassilopoulou, and it entails the following 4 aspects. The first one is a common definition of Europe, understanding Europe to be one entity. The principle of European integration, so wanting to have some kind of European integration without going into detail what exactly it is. The practice of European integration, so it could be specific institutions or policies. And finally, the ambition to build a European polity, a political integrated community that goes beyond what is currently the case in Europe. And since we have these different aspects, we can also see that Euroscepticism exists in different variations and different degrees, because different parts of European integration can be opposed. And if we try to look at the combination or the intersection between populism and Euroscepticism, we end up at the phenomenon of populist Euroscepticism, where the populist ideology or worldview is combined with opposition to European integration. And often this process, this combination determines also who is understood to be the people in the populist worldview and who is seen as the elite or the corrupted elite. So we define populist Euroscepticism as opposing European integration while applying the populist worldview, this elite and people antagonism, to the European context or to the context of the European Union. So following from that, having defined basically our understanding of populist Euroscepticism, maybe Natasha, you can say something more about the specific case of Poland. Do we see populist Euroscepticism in Poland, and in what form do you think we find it here?
Thank you. Yeah, that's certainly the answer is yes, we do. But I would start from saying that Poland is a very specific case, because we do observe also a very high support towards European integration and European Union among the society. So it's always noted that it's more than 80, sometimes even up to 90% of people who are happy for EU membership. They see benefits coming from EU membership, and they are generally positive about European Union as a community. So we need to take this into account when we think about Euroscepticism. That is definitely quite a predominant, I would say, in the political discourse nowadays in Poland, especially since 2015, since Law and Justice managed to build a coalition and is governing Poland. But what matters here as well is that the Euroscepticism is used by different parties, by different movements in a different way. So generally EU membership and European issues are politicized, are very much used also on the domestic arena by the domestic actors in order to gain some political profits. So that's in a nutshell what's the situation here in Poland. And in this context, of course, the populist worldview about which you spoke a second ago is applied on the European level. So when we discuss European policies, this is when you can detect this dichotomy between pure people, in this case Polish people, the Polish society, and the corrupted elite that not necessarily needs to be a domestic corrupted elite, but it would be then European, so-called European elite. And in this respect, I think that it's interesting also to note that we very rarely speak about European people. So we mentioned people in this national context, rather understood like Poles, the nation of Poles, understood in an ethnic terms rather than civic terms, and this also adds some extra flavor to this Polish version of Eurosceptic populism. And then when it comes to elite, it's also quite visible that there are some member states that are particularly visible in this debate and are accused of being this ruling elite. And it will be obviously Germany, but also often France. So the big, the old, the most powerful, the richest member states are accused of being colonizers, of being too dominant over the small member states, over the new member states, and of course Poland would be then a great example of that. We often also detect that European institutions are treated in this way, so this elite would be European Commission, sometimes European Parliament, but to a lesser extent, sometimes Council, or just simply said Brussels. So this dictate of Brussels is very visible in the discourse. And in this respect, the pure people of Poland, they have absolutely no say. They are unable to negotiate with these oppressors coming from the international level, if I may say so. But again, there are different shades of this Euroscepticism in Poland, and also to different extent political parties are opposing membership. And in this respect, we will often also see local elite being accused of being too dominant or too much pushing for certain solutions. And this politicization of European integration in Poland is also visible very much on the political arena. So there is this conflict between left-wing and right-wing political parties over the European policies. So I guess that's in the nutshell, but I'm happy to hear what you have found while analyzing all this data that you mentioned we managed to gather. So how does opposition to Europe, to European integration, to European Union, how does it really look like? If you could give us a couple of examples.
Yeah. In our study, we don't only look at how the populist worldview is applied to the EU level, but we also look at to what extent and how these parties in fact oppose or support European integration. And here we see that most parties, political parties, in principle support European integration or claim they support European integration as well as EU membership, and often use even quite pro-European language in this regard. For example, by claiming that Poland is the heart of Europe, and that we are not going anywhere, and that Poland is and will always be a member of the EU. Nevertheless, we also see that many of the same parties do oppose certain aspects of European integration. A few parties desire for Poland to actually leave the European Union, to give up its membership. For example, certain political actors within the movement of Confederacja. But most other parties actually oppose or advocate for drastic reform of the European Union and desire a different system or political system within the EU. And there's different variations to this. Some parties require or demand more influence to the European Parliament and to citizens, for example, through referenda. A good example of this is the party Kukiz 15. But other parties that use populist Euroscepticism, in fact, advocate for a stronger role of member states and of national governments, which is a very different type of Euroscepticism, or at least a different type of reform. And an example of this would be the governing party PiS, who advocates for a stronger role of national governments and of nation states within the EU. So here we see that language often in principle and in abstract is in favor of EU membership, but often in combination with the populist rhetoric and discourse, drastic reform and a different type of EU integration is advocated for. And that's the type of populist Euroscepticism that we often see in the Polish context.
Thank you, and that seems to be a very interesting case, and I think that we need to follow the development of the Polish populist Euroscepticism closely, especially now when all the debate is going on, when we are also facing quite, I would say, a hot discussion about the Polish membership within Poland, but also on the international arena. It's a topic, yeah. So in this respect, I'm sure that this is a very complex phenomena that we are researching, and I think we shall be back when our research is completed to share a bit more of the results. So thank you for coming.
Great, thank you.
And see you again.